Now from the east to the west, the north coast, a place I love the best. WordLife came together from the 401 just so people could get together, not contest. You know that we feel much stress when they try to divide and rule. Do we invest in our own and not play the fool? WordLife comes together as a collaboration. Bring together people separated through years of migration, conflagration. Coming together down these 4 roads that we walk in, these alleyways we walk in. Sometimes after skulking. Check how we come together like this shit be listening.
Anyway, welcome. It's so good to see everybody.
Under pressure.
Thanks for coming out to be a part of the WordLife20 panel. It's amazing to see longtime faces and new faces. So we have about an hour of discussion. We'll go from now until about 60 minutes. And just want to hear your voices, to have a few questions to ask you. And just as we celebrate and think about spoken word since the top of the millennium till tomorrow, right? It's also amazing to have all you amazing artists here. Naila, Roen, all the way from Montreal, right? Dwayne, Morgan, wow. Jelani, Wyze, Nias, JD Vishus, also known as Joseph Daly, Britta Bador, or Britta B.
Yeah, you know me.
That's right. And Eddy David, also known as Eddy, the original one. And I am your host, Motion.
Nice.
I knew this was going to be the hype panel. Already prepared for all y'all. Okay, so yes, WordLife20. We're looking at this panel to talk a little about, you know, the legacy as well as lineage and future of Black spoken word, Griot culture. And when we say spoken word and oral culture, we mean in all of its forms, from dub to hip hop, emceeing, to performance poetry. Sometimes we're seeing it on stage, sometimes on page, sometimes in the theater, and now definitely digitally and in the virtual world, which is showing what we're doing right here, coming together and being able to cross borders and boundaries through the power of the Zoom room. And we're going to be looking at having a really interactive and creative discussion and conversation on this topic, looking at, you know, some of those who have been a part of the really important and impactful WordLife Tales of the Underground Griots compilation or album that some of us came together to be a part of almost over 20 years ago, and seeing what all the artists are continuing to do, as well as those who are also doing work in all of their sectors. And we're also moving this scene as well as the art into the new decade of the 2020s. The 2020s have started off in a weird way, strange way, but as we know, the word always survives, right? The storytellers, those who are writing the poetry, even when we're quiet, we're still ruminating and thinking about how we make sense through words. And so what I'd love to do is to go around and have each of you introduce yourself. We have, you know, poets, we have people teaching in universities, we have those who are mentoring in communities, hosting TV shows and radio shows, and writing novels and acting on television and on stage, as well as all the other ways that we create. So I'd like to go around, and could you say your name and then say, you know, your tagline, like what you do, your musical, creative, literary mix of things. So why don't we start with Dwayne?
All right, I am Dwayne Morgan, spoken word artist, author, event producer, TV show host, and artist from WordLife way back when.
And do you have like 3 lines, poetic lines, that you would introduce yourself with if you had to drop 3 lines?
Why are the Black poets so aggressive and always talking about race? Even here, under the facade of a safe space, it happens, passion mistaken for aggression. It seems like every time we try to be great, we are broken down to nothing but our race.
Thank you, Dwayne. That's right. And now we're going to move on. We're going to come back to Dwayne, but let's move on to Naila Keleta-Mae. Naila, introduce yourself to the people.
Well, my name is Naila Keleta-Mae. I'm an artist and associate professor at the University of Waterloo. The areas that I research and teach and make art in now are like race, gender, and performance. I think a lot about Blackness and freedom. Teach a course called Blackness and Freedom. And yeah, right. That's the work.
And you have maybe 3 lines of your poeticness to share with us?
This Blackness, this realness, this queerness, these questions, truth-telling, and I forgot the rest.
That's all you need. That's all
from relentless. No, I feel away though. I feel away.
That's all you need. Just a few lines. Just
yes,
wanted, to bring us in. Exactly, a teaser, 100%.
Sure.
And then Eddy, the original one.
Yes.
Introduce
I'm Eddy, the original one. I'm a beatbox poet, organizer, tech consultant, and many, many, many other things. Yeah, just a all around bad boy.
Bam, bam.
And why don't you, give us just a couple lines, a few words from the poetic mind or the beatbox mind of Eddy.
I've been breakdancing, beatboxing, and spitting rhymes on street corners since I was yay high. And if you don't know how long that was probably before you was a gleam in your daddy's eye. But now I'm sitting here with tears in my eyes, knowing that she's right. I don't have a damn thing to say. Because rent's due, baby needs new shoes, and daddy still ain't got it.
The original one. Thank you, Eddy. And moving on to another WordLife feature poet, Wyze. Jelani Nice, why don't you let us know a little bit about who you are?
Hello, I'm a writer, I'm an MC, I'm a poet, broadcaster, novelist, regular man, Yeah, that's about it. As for it's crazy because you was like, have lines of poetry to introduce yourself. And I was like, what am I gonna do? Poetry that introduces myself. And then I actually went back and listened to the WordLife album, and then I was like, oh yeah, perfect. So this is actually from the WordLife. It says, I'm a child of the lightning, conceived in the flash that stabs between the darkness. My heart is the last one to break. I worked hard for this rep that I make on frostbitten streets over heartbeats and tape. I think is a good intro.
Yes. That's one of the first tracks on WordLife. It almost brings it in, right? Sets the tone. Thank you, Wyze. And now, Britta B.
Yeah, you know me.
That's right.
I am a poet, spoken word artist, MC, mentor for emerging artists and next gen leaders. And a few words I'll share with you today. What if we watched the world as it sank? What entertainment could we hook out of its gargled neck? Whose channel saves the climate? Whose button breaks the quiet? Some of us still don't have a clue. Some of us still don't have a choice but to use our voice to push back, protest, persist, the pinky finger to unite the fist. Hey.
Yes, Britta B.
Nice.
That's just a teaser. Thank you. And moving on to Blue River, also known as Roen Higgins. Introduce yourself.
Thank you. So yes, my name is Roen Higgins, dubbed as Blue River 2 decades ago. But first and foremost, I've been working in the front line with youth for over 26 years in schools and detention centers and street work. Been working with the Black community as well. I'm also a creative coach, which I love to do. It's a newfound love. Didn't realize I was doing it already. I work with multi-passionate individuals who just have a hard time navigating and being productive because we love to do so many things. And I'm an event planner for youth empowerment and wellness or well-being for women and men. And yeah, that's what I do. I'm a mother of a 17-year-old. So that's what I do. And yeah.
Beautiful. And would you like to share just a few lines or words from one of your poetic offerings?
Okay. I guess the one that'll be most recent, well, after everything that we've seen, the uprising, you know, from George Floyd, is called I'm a Witness. And just goes, one of the parts, I go, I'm a witness of strange fruit being crushed against concrete, freshly pressed by the knees of an officer of peace. The juice of a human life pouring out of its vessel, trying to find its soul lost in the streets. Sweet to the one who just picked another nigga from the tree of life, bitter to us who still has to fight this fight.
Right. Yes. Words, sound, power. Thanks everybody. Wait, hold on. Did I get everybody?
JD.
Mind your business.
I got everybody?
I'll go.
Oh, wait. No. JD. Thank you, Roen. JD. Yes. So introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm JD Vishus, aka Joseph Daly, spoken word artist, hip hop artist, actor. Working on my second album, working on another album, working on a lot of acting gigs, and I'm a social worker and a father of three, two of them right here. Hope that they don't make too much noise. I'm sorry, you know. Right on.
And would you share maybe a little bit from the JD Vishus catalog?
You know, our immune system isn't used to COVID-19, but it's been attacked by a disease that we've seen since 1619. It's been embedded in our genes, and we'll kill it by any means. And by any means, I have a dream, but you know what? I'm still woke, if you know what I mean.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much, JD. It is, proper that we open up the space with the poetry or the words of power that y'all have been writing probably from inception, right? A lot of people always say, oh yeah, I always wrote, or, or something happened or some inspiration happened that brought that career or that inspiration to fore. And when we're coming together and thinking about WordLife as this moment of time, this moment that brought together artists from Ottawa, Toronto, and Montreal. At the time, that seemed like a big world, right? Because this is just before we really were really being connected globally by by social media. And so I thought it would be good to sort of reflect a little bit on that and think about those who were on the CD. How did you get involved in it, or what was one of your maybe key memories or moments when you became a part of the overall project? And for anybody, any track that you listened to on the CD or on the album that stuck out to you, and why? So, and who'd like to jump in on that?
I have to jump in and talk about Afrikaren's poem "Lonely." Wow, I forgot. I think how tremendous of a writer she is and performer. Yeah. And it just made me, I know that she wrote a play called Building Blocks, but it really made me think that I hope she's still writing. She's a tremendous writer and performer. It's just, such a good track.
Oh yeah, thank you, for opening up with Lonely. Anybody else? That is definitely one of the pieces that stream of consciousness, that flow,
Yeah, so well written, and just really thinking it, just thoughtful and careful and honest, not really it, and I think very different stylistically than what we were doing in some ways. So just such a clear voice. Yeah, I hope she's still writing. That's one of the things I thought after listening to the album again. I really hope she is. Yeah.
Yeah, anybody else? Thank you, Naila. Who has heard a piece that comes to mind when you think of the WordLife Tales of the Underground Griots album?
The whole album still, when you play it now, I could still bump that now. And everybody, your piece, Motion Midnight, Jelani's piece, like JD's Vishus, you know, safe brain sex, like you know, Dwayne, like it's like everything, nth degrees, like you almost want to say, I really seriously, I almost want to say the whole album, because everything gave me, it represented us as Canadian, Black Canadians, and it represented us as Caribbean Canadians.
Yes.
It represented us as hip hop Canadians. It's this overall, depending on what each track put you in a different mood, but it gave you some kind of substance. It gave you some kind of sustenance that you can hold on to, and you're like, I like, yes, you know. You know, so from Debbie, you, Naila, everybody, yeah, man. Kagiso, that piece, Kagiso, he's actually the last track on there with the piece about Anansi, and how the stories came across from Africa with Anansi. That piece actually, even though like I'd heard it a few times, it took me a while to I was like, oh, that's what he's saying. Right, I was just kind of happy to hear a Nancy story, but then when I really realized how in depth the piece was, yeah, that y'all need to re-listen to Nancy to that piece of Nancy, you know, that piece.
Yeah, it's so interesting when you take a listen back and what new things you hear. I'm really interested to hear Britta or Roen, as you may have never heard anything from this album. Was there any track that may have stuck out to your theme or sound, whatever comes to mind?
Go ahead,
well, I'm a big fan of your motion, like your rhythm and just your empowering Black female voice. I feel like a child again. Like growing up, I was like really into listening to female MCs and everything, and so it puts me in that space where I get to dream again of like the potential and power of my own voice. And then, so there's a lot of pieces on there that make you think. And also though, just to bump to, like Rub-a-Dub Radio was so much fun, and just that one, that really makes me move.
Well, I'll say for me, it's crazy. I'm listening to it, I'm like, I feel like I was left out, you know, like in the sense of being in Montreal, and I had met Naila, like, so Freedom was the first spoken word album I ever heard. And I won't say one of the last, but in that kind of the roots of it all, if that makes sense. So a lot of, you know, I came probably when, what was it, Coco Cafe, you know, that's where I met a lot of you guys. And that was it. So when I hear this, I'm like, oh my God, I feel like there's this underground world that I missed out on. So I think it's dope to hear people that were doing it. And it's not as fresh or new as people thought when it did come out for many of us, you know, before the Jason's lyrics and everything, people like think it's a whole Hollywood movement that started it, when we know there's history to it. But to see a Canadian Caribbean perspective, to actually feel that, to hear the voices like Britta said, like when I heard, is it Dear Marquis? Is that what it's called?
Right, yes.
Right?
Yep.
Like, exactly. I heard that tonight, I'm like, who that? Because I know you motion, I followed your stuff, but I was like, you know, the intonation, the delivery, the projection of just hearing everyone's vocal tones, the music involved. A lot of people never have a chance or opportunity to bridge a lot of music and record their stuff. So I think this is an anthology on another level. So
wow, that's so interesting that y'all both talked about the concept of rhythm and music, something to bump to, something to that it, when we're thinking about spoken word, it was not words alone. And even when the words were alone, there was a rhythm within them, and trying to bring together different types of artists, not only like, and then we said but like, you know,
exactly.
not that there's nothing wrong with that, but like just, you know, for everything from a prosy vibe to a very theatrical or spoken or storytelling vibe. I was thinking, Jelani, Wyze, you as an MC and a poet and a storyteller, what was your experience, especially listening back to your two tracks there, and then maybe some of the others? What did that make you reflect on or bring to your mind?
What I thought about, well, the first track that really stood out for me was midnight, because you go from before the dance starts, getting ready, the anticipation of it, to actually coming into place, seeing the different sets of people that are in there, catching the vibe, the music, and there's this whole build-up. And then it just takes this turn. And all of a sudden, it's exactly the opposite of what I thought it was when it started. And so I've gone on this whole journey of, anticipation to being there and getting to vibe in the place, and the music is really beating down the place, and everything is amazing. And then you get this shift, and it is exactly like what happens when you actually go to a party that you've been waiting for, and it seems to be everything that you waited for, and then it gets shot up. So that whole experience, that whole ride, to me it still stands out, because it still makes me remember being in that situation. And the fact that it starts before the party starts, to me, is the most powerful thing about it, because nobody goes to a dance thinking, yeah, this is going to get shot up.
Yeah.
Even the gunman himself doesn't go to the dance and this is into this. You go to it expecting a celebration. You know what I mean? A party. You're going to be there with your friends. You're going to be drinking. You're going to be bumping to the music. You're going to see people that you're attracted to and people that think you're attractive, and all of this stuff going on is what you're anticipating. And to get there, and it just takes this whole left turn.
And that's crazy, because you're talking about
that is to me the piece that always back.
Oh, sorry, you just chipped out for a brief second there. But I think if I caught the very end, basically you're also talking about like that randomness, and being able to capture the story or the storytelling. And you, as someone who tells stories both with rhythm as well as on the page, shows that there's so many different ways that we're telling stories. JD, I'm thinking of you also, who is one of the hip hop representation on WordLife, along with man like Manchild, and well, everybody was affected in a lot of ways through hip hop culture, but sort of that marrying of what was known as spoken word with hip hop, and then it being one thing. What comes to mind when you think about your experience through that time, and through that experience?
Well, I mean, one pivotal experience is when we performed in Montreal, and just the vibe that we got from the people from Montreal was just bananas. I got to give a shout out to Ziploc and Manchild. You know what I mean? Have patience, you will have patience. You know what I mean? They threw down on those tracks too. And it's just the marrying of hip hop and spoken word. To me, when it comes to WordLife, this is an ongoing story. We can talk about the past and what it meant to us and everything. I think there's a future to this CD also. Understand? Because there was just too much talent on there to not be even further exposed. This has to be on Spotify. This has to be out there. But in terms of what I remember is just the coming together of so much talent at one place at one time that we haven't really seen since then. That we have to refresh for the 2020 in the post-COVID era. We got to refresh that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Agreed. I'm in agreement.
Oh, Roen,
I think we were before spoken word too. Like thinking 2000, it wasn't what it became. It has become, right? Like the language to even call what we were doing, to name it, was still kind of up in the air at that time. I feel like Canada Council had just started that spoken and electronic words grant program, right? Again, 1999. But like, yeah, it's still, even the term itself was open. And so I felt that expansiveness in terms of like all the different styles across the album, you know, all the different references that we were doing too, right? Like to all the different shows, to New Jack City, you could hear the influences of Gil Scott-Heron, but then also of Jill Scott, you know, like the influences of, and references to Michelle Ndege Ocello and that whole movement and moment. So yeah, there's a way that there's something nostalgic that I felt about listening to it too. Just brought me back to a different moment.
An interesting thing for you, Naila, is at the time you were basically like a Toronto transplant in Montreal, right? So you were one of the ones who were like, oh, she's gone. She's, you know, she has traveled, you know, to the
or just in between.
And being a part of the scene in Montreal at the time. Is there any reflection you have on being a poet during that time in Montreal? What was happening for yourself as an artist, you know, that was sparking off sort of your movement between poetry and writing, which we knew you were doing like since before Fresh Arts times and everything like that, and then into theater?
Yeah, I think I felt a kind of freedom in Montreal that I didn't feel in Toronto. In terms of structure, like the communities weren't as strong or specific, and I didn't have a history there more than so, you know? So it felt experimental in a way. I didn't feel like, if I think about even my like style, like early work sounded a lot like the Fresh Arts crews that I rolled with, you know, in terms of a particular kind of feeling of hip hop. But then in Montreal, I think I started looking at some different styles and different lengths and that kind of thing. So, but it was a tough place to be linguistically too, and just feeling, you know, back and forth and not necessarily ever being connected in one spot fully,
right?
Which has its advantages, and it just is, right? It just is. So yeah, so but the work that was coming out and that we've done, and then Ottawa too, right? Like there was the Ottawa connection to Eddy, right? It was holding it down. So we had a nice little tri-city thing going on that was interesting, and that has gone off in so many kind of interesting directions as well. And the themes of that record, listen to me record, like a woman. The themes of the records, them. You know the one where you spin and the same thing? Themes in it. Like, wow. But it feels like the same things that we're facing now.
Yeah, you know, even as we're jumping into themes, I'm thinking, Dwayne, maybe you could speak a little bit about that movement between the cities and as well as, you know, across the border through and with the WordLife project, as well as building up those networks to start doing larger touring, because that has had a big part in your trajectory as a poet and as a performer. Maybe you can make a connection between that migration of us as poets and you as a poet during that time, and then how it has affected how you've seen the poetic world since.
I mean, I think I had started, you know, traveling and just going to Detroit and New York and different places and just really, you know, trying to check things out and meet people. And, you know, I drive to Philly and just, you know, meeting poets and stuff. And I found so many dope poets that I thought people in Toronto would like, but I had no idea, you know, what to do with them. So then I had to like start creating events to get these people over. And through doing that and through networking with them, it just opened up a whole other world of people who are like, hey, well, I'm connected to this or that or whatever. So then we were able, you know, to get down to the New Eurekan and do a show down there and you know, utilize other artists like, you know, Talal Macy and Faraji and Jamal St. John. And for a lot of artists, build those networks so that a lot of artists also had the opportunity to go and travel and see some different places. And I think one thing, if we just kind of even go back a little bit too, in terms of what we're talking about with the album, I think one of the things for me that is really, you know, special about the album is that there's so many women on the album. There's so many pieces written and performed by women on the album. And a lot of times, even at that time when we did it, a lot of the stuff was so male dominated that making the conscious effort to make sure that women were well represented on the album, I think was also very important, that those voices and those stories were there and were represented. So I think that was also something that sticks out, because a lot of times, you know, when we'd see the hip hop compilations and all these things, it was like, you know, so many men and then a token, you know, woman, you know, doing a piece or whatever. But there was no token, you know, woman. Like the female voice was very present on the compilation. And I thought that's, you know, sticks out as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, good. That's a really great point. Even going back to what you just said about the voice, or the female voice, or all our voices, you know, people's identities were being represented on this. And Britta, I wondered if you saw any connection, even through a theme or a subject matter, or something that may connect between what you heard when you're listening to the album and what is happening right now today.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was also a reminder of how spoken word, you know, has come to manifest, you know, thinking about, you know, oral traditions, and thinking about, you know, from the village to the street. A lot of it reminded me of like street poetry. So I thought, well, what is street poetry to me? So I think about, you know, before that, the need to have word of mouth and the need to share information and knowledge. And that's also hip hop too, like to share knowledge. But from the village to the streets to the microphone, you know, either at the parties or at the events, or, you know, sometimes even the galas or the really like prestigious events. And now a lot of spoken word is used in commercial. So looking at 2020 spoken word and poetry and feeling like a trampoline off of this album, I think that it helps to create a full scope of what the intent of what spoken word for a lot of artists is, to also, again, just going back to potential of what we can help it to become digitally, in reality, physically, and also, again, just to have a record keeping of knowledge.
Yeah, does anybody want to jump off of that?
I'd just like to, sorry, I had to jump in first.
No, go on.
I just wanted to, one of the things that really when I take it in, that really strikes me is how young we were at the time. And I think that really, you hear it, at least I hear it when I listen back to it, maybe because, you know, I'm older now, but I really hear how young we all were at that time. And how that it was a very much a youth kind of energy that you get when I listen to it, you know what I mean? Like I listen to the tracks and I hear young people talking about what they're experiencing and what they're seeing and what they're going through, and a very youth-centric kind of gaze coming through the project. And I think that that was a huge part of why it sounds how it sounds. And I also think the fact that it all came out of a live performance circuit. So it has that live energy. I mean, you know, we'll be remiss not to big up like All True Spoken is Poetry in Motion, and I mean shows like that where for a lot of us, you know,
Black Cat.
you know what I mean? It's Sierra Citizen and the Cat at one time, and
that's right.
All the different people that were involved, and that show circuit, you know what I mean? From even spots like the Rivoli and other places. A lot of that birthed that energy because there was that whole, we were all young and we were all competitive and we all wanted to be the one to, when we got on stage, to really like tear down the place, and that vibe and that energy is there. And as you go along the CD, you also hear a maturing of that, where it's not just about having you know, a dope minute or two to bust open the crowd, but you hear longer pieces and pieces that are more based in sitting down and taking it in as opposed to being a part of an audience and vibing out. So to me, those are the things that I really hear when I listen back to it, and it makes me excited to think, what about doing this with a new set of people, younger people who, you know what I mean? Our voices are still important, don't get me wrong, but it's always good to get that cutting edge, young, I'm in it right now energy. And to me, it's exciting to me to think about WordLife with that type of energy, with a whole new crop of young people who have all these ideas and are just ready to bust open the place, you know?
Yeah, you're so right. Amazing artists. Like when I hear people trying to sometimes say, "Oh, spoken word is dead," I'm like, "What are you listening to? Where are you going? Are you not online? Are you not seeing and hearing what's happening in these sound bites on a regular basis?" But I think maybe because it just is, you know, it just is, and it's really interesting to continue to be inspired. Blue River, you're going to jump in right after Jay Wyze.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when I was listening, I mean, like Britta said, for me, the Griots really comes through, but the fusion of making it, when I say fusion of the sound that was relevant then, that's still very present now, but I feel that Renaissance vibe, you know, in the sense of culturally what we're going through, what we've been through, it still feels like I'm listening to it and I'm there. You know what I mean? It's crazy. And I feel that this is something, I think it was who said it, that this should be on Spotify, that this definitely we have to do. Is it JD? Right? You know, definitely the work is not dead. The word never dies, you know, and I can say this because for someone who always felt alone, like on the scene, felt like I was doing something fresh and new. I'm hearing you guys, I'm like, I always went against the grain of like, that brother who was cocoa butter skin, and I just, nothing against it. But for me, I was like, just like, no, why are we mirroring each other's sound and effects and presence and delivery? And I felt like listening to that, there was diversity there. I heard the uniqueness. I heard different, like everyone was authentically them. And it's dope to be inspired by each other, but the carbon copy vibe sometimes it just make me irate. You know what I mean? So I think it's great to be inspired by and still cultivate your identity. And I heard that even and I say collective, because even when I see the imagery, it just felt so 90s. Like, you know, you're looking through your photo album. That's something that you would never feel again. But the words, I felt the lifeblood of the album felt like I can identify with, even if I wasn't there. So I think, yeah, respect to the architects, man, always. And yeah, it's not dead. Even when you're watching politics, the opening before the Obama speak, just the other day, you had a spoken word. I was like, yes, you know, we'll always be relevant because people, well, in Montreal, we have in the Haitian community, they keep saying, oh, was it the slameuse? Slam. Like, no, that's not slam. I'm always giving people the definition because through languages, it's misunderstood of what it is. Dub poetry, spoken word, slam, and, you know, all these different things. So I always feel it's an opportunity to educate as well and to learn and evolve. And this album is, I guess, what Naila does, you know, as a professor, I feel like I'm getting schooled every time. So thank you guys.
Oh, it's amazing.
I was amazed at.
No, go ahead. I'm amazed. You're amazed. You be amazed first.
I was like,
by how many people's poems I knew. Like how it would come on and I hadn't listened in so long, but there were certain sections, and it's because of that live circuit that Jay Wyze was talking about. Like I heard y'all's poems, like we heard each other's poems over and over and over and over and over again. And so I was listening, I'm like, wait, I know those sections, right? And it was just, kind of almost like a repertoire where you're like working with people and everybody's creating their own thing. And you could hear the influences, but yes, I think it was early enough and it wasn't solidified at that time. I hear that openness in it too, right? Like it hadn't, we weren't doing slams and talking specifically about spoken word at the time. And that is very much alive in the work too. I remember Kai Kello, who was on the scene at the same time, right, in Montreal, and going to a show of Kai's where he turned his back to the audience and like read his poem for a section, right? Like we were still, you know, just checking it out, exploring. experimenting, you know, and that to me is really exciting about like Black art too, that we were doing that in real time. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, Wyze, JD, Roen, also, you all, as well as Naila, you sort of been talking about an energy, and the energy often comes from urgency. And when we're looking now towards today, we're looking at right now, we're in a time of urgency. And we're always in a time of urgency, I guess. I guess it just depends on where you are at what time. But there's something about this time, the current state of the world within our generation that we're alive, that is, you know, is particular, specific. And I wonder, how are you all as artists, and as well as the art that you're hearing and experiencing, developing and creating, sharing your work? What is affecting your work? How are you finding it within this environment, within this atmosphere, between this 2020? How are you being either inspired or impacted, or how is your work? What is the how is the urgency affecting you as an artist, internally as well as externally?
Well, the pandemic was all about pivoting, right? Well, some people had to maintain, and I definitely had to maintain too, our sanity. But the pivot for creatives, in essence, is definitely what? Well, a lot of us, the shows were pulled, right? That's the huge one. And I was trying to leave my job after 20 years. I was like, 20 years, that's it. I'm done. I'm going to do coaching and just perform. And then that was all pulled from me, and events. So cancel. And you're just there like, how do you make sure that you maintain or leave a legacy, that your words live beyond the breath of life? And that made you realize of how can we cultivate what we do differently. And I love the pivot that we saw, people bringing shows on live. You know, even if you were shy, you had to break through that mold. So I think that was one thing of, you know, for those of us who haven't done an album and been really coasting, it's like, oh, you know, I perform on demand. It really brought that essence of, like we see what happened with Chadwick Boseman, like in 4 or 5 years, when you see that, and what do we respect is the fact that he put us all no matter what. And that, to me, like, high regards. Like, if I'm having a headache, I'm flatlined, you know what I mean? And to be going through treatment and still put your all into your work with roles or whatever it is that is authentic to you, you know, and knowing your values, your core values as an artist, what to say no to, you know, what to say yes to, and, you know, things shift. And this pandemic, social unrest, really going down to your core values and going deep and saying, okay, what will I leave on this earth? And for me, it's get it together, get your album together, get your book. Everybody's been telling me, I finish a show, I'm like, where's your book, man? Which table's yours? You know, because I was all over the place. Yes, I love my work, but in the end, I leave nothing else. My word, my daughter's there, and she's even like, Mom, I don't have nothing to read when it comes to your stuff. So I think for me, it is about that pivot, our core values, and be willing to grow, because that also, the shifting tide comes and we need to be able to navigate and never stay stuck.
Well, actually, yeah, I'd love to jump off of there. Maybe JD and Dwayne, what just jumping off of what Blue Riva has connected to the urgency of the time. How is that affecting you all as artists and your artistry?
Yeah, what Blue just said, ditto. Listen, there's so much fodder for artistic endeavors now. There's so much to go on right now. I just think this, I mean, it's interesting how this synergistic thing is working with the WordLife anniversary. I think this is the perfect time for this kind of information to come back out there in the world right now. There's so much happening, and this is really, for me personally, this has really revitalized my art. I'm working, like I said, I'm working on 2 albums right now. And I mean, as bad as the pandemic has been, in a lot of ways, it's shown us that, you know, we have to really be urgent about what we do. And also, in my case, it's given me time to go back into my art form, understand? So now that I'm not performing out there, my art form has been really increasing quite a bit, because I'm really concentrating on the actual form and concentrating on what is next after this whole COVID thing dissipates, because it will. Don't be like fooled by this. It's going to go. The 1918 epidemic, I think, was worse than this, much worse. All right, and it was done, and this will be done. So the real thing is, what are we going to do post-pandemic, or what are we working on right now? Understand? And again, that's why I keep on saying for the future, I think this word life. Let's really look forward to maybe a part 2, or to really get this information out there as it is right now.
Yeah, and even the concept of word life as a theory, or as a that those words like word, sound, and power, beats, rhymes, and life, or word life, these are all parts of that underground griot culture, whether it's from dub or slam or hip hop. Each genre seems to have that concept that holds it together, and the word being life, the word being an expression of what is happening. And when I listen to each one of these pieces, as well as the pieces of the other artists, all the artists who are here, you're always addressing not only what's going on externally, but also what's happening internally, right? Dwayne?
I think the pandemic and the social unrest has created a great opportunity. I think there's one of the problems with a lot of the spoken word stuff is that a lot of the wrong people and elements have gotten involved with it because it became cool. It became, the thing to do. So people who don't really care about the story get involved because, it's cool, I could make money off of this. And I think the pandemic creates a situation where those people can't eat. So what's going to happen is a lot of those people are going to die out, and create the opportunity for those people who really care about the art and the art form to reemerge as the leaders in this thing again, if we take this opportunity to actually do the work and put things in place so that, as JD says, when things open up, we can then execute and be like, all right, this is what it is. Forget this gimmicky stuff. This is, what it is. So I think there's a great opportunity there. I think so many people right now are listening and looking for Black stories. This is the best time to be writing about your Blackness, because there's a lot of people who feel guilty, a lot of people who just want to learn more, all this kind of stuff, who's just like, let me listen to your this and that. This is a great opportunity to, market yourself, make money off of the stories that we are telling, because there are so many people trying to understand what's going on and what's going on in the lives of Black people. And I have no problem helping somebody understand. There's just a price tag to the understanding. So it's really a matter of us looking at how can we use this moment, right, to move things forward and move things in a new direction, and reclaim some of the things that have been lost by people who didn't really care about a lot of the things that we might care about.
Like a new paradigm, in a way, or era. And it's interesting because we have that part where we're looking at the opportunities that have been opened up. Zoom all of a sudden is now a tool, where 5 months ago it wasn't. People using the IG Live, people, that almost like as usual, when Black culture moves, technology has to figure out how to step up in order to be able to keep up with the need for dissemination, right? Just like with Grandmaster Flash and the turntables, it's like, I need 2 turntables and a mixer that can make these 2 records blend, right? And so you have to figure out, once we make things, then you have to, the companies have to figure out how to provide those tools or keep up with the want. And I'm also thinking about the urgency within, sort of resistance and rebellion and revolution of what the people need. They need the poets or need the word. Naila, you talk a lot about Black joy, but we're in a time of a lot of Black pain. I thought you and Eddy maybe could talk a bit about poetically and spoken wordly, how though that becomes a voice or is a voice at this time and in the past to express that Black pain, but also express resistance. I'm thinking of your piece, Eddy, Justice Denied, and many others. So maybe you two could share a little bit on that.
Eddy, please go first.
Okay. For me, what's interesting is just in writing, because in writing pieces that basically that I know that was like 20 years ago, but them being so relevant to now, that part of it makes me sad, and but also understanding that the relevancy in the work that we write to let the new generation also know that certain things aren't new under the sun. So don't be, because they're still saying all the same things. So when tragedy happens within our community, the powers that be are still using the same things. I'm not racist because I have a because so-and-so is my best friend, and and all this, I don't see color, and So I feel like the work that we do, that basically we have to, out those things to let people know that, hey, don't fall for the okie doke, don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe. That basically, so the work still stands in as a foundation, and also as basically, because as Griots have said, it's an oral library. It's an oral library of what what's past, and so also to know that even in talking about pivoting, we also have to pivot how we respond to things with our art, and to empower the community. And also in understanding, even with some of the stuff that Dwayne was saying, in that now also too, even our business plan, because even when we first started doing it, yes, it's for the loves, but we're the ones that kind of, and young people like Britta B and others like her peers who are coming up, we now just have to have a different also blueprint, because now that we understand our worth, because first it was, it's for the love, and we're doing it for the love, because a lot of times basically because now as we get older, and we have, we have our spouses, and we have our kids, and we have mortgage, and we have all these other things, but this art sometimes has to sustain us, and it gives us life, because sometimes when you go to that 9 to 5 and it just sucks all the life out of you, basically this word is the thing that's giving us life, right? So, but also now knowing that basically, that it has value, it has worth, and I am as an artist can also basically take care of all the things that I need to take care of once I understand my worth. So now I know how to negotiate better, right? That basically artists just need a different way of understanding the whole financial literacy, and knowing that, whether you're a coach, whether you're a life coach or whatever, using the spoken word to be a life coach, or be it to theater or whatever, but now we understand our value to that we can put ourselves into the marketplace, but not with, masters, but we are the ones mastering our own art and pushing it out there, and just shaping the new future.
Thank you. Thanks, Eddy. Naila.
I think about Blackness and freedom, and I guess maybe not joy as much, probably
right, yes,
should though, but no, but the freedom, because and it's making me think a lot about what does it mean to write for a Black audience? Like, what does it mean to write thinking about how our words will impact people who are already experiencing like the horrors of white supremacy and anti-Black racism in all facets of their lives, And so I think, like, when I listen to my own piece on WordLife, I think about the politics of the piece, right? And how my politics have changed and shifted, and where they have and haven't, and ask myself, like, who is that for? Like, what does it mean sometimes to excavate all those like stories of trauma and pain as well? And that for me is like a big shift, because it's about becoming a mother in the last 10 years, right? And like thinking differently about what of my work I could share with my children, and seeing like all of the like sections of it that I thought, like, in terms of the content or the theme, like the ideas of it, yeah, we talk about it in ways that and have forever. But some of the language and the concepts, like, yeah, it doesn't feel like how I try to express those things now, because I think I'm thinking about like legacy and love and like what it means to speak to them more than what it means to speak out against to white supremacy, or to speak to white people and try to be visible and make like what the experience and life of being in this country that is like white supremacist and that is like anti-Black racist, right? Like in all of its foundational institutions and in all of its politics, and that we've lived that for centuries, and the ongoing denial of that reality, right? So yeah, it is that Black pain and Black freedom.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's an answer, but those are my reflections.
Yeah, the thoughts on it, it's, showing that, I feel from the beginning of time, well, I wasn't there, but you know what I mean? Like that from time immemorial, that these words have had importance, impact. They've been inspired and written or said because of a way to speak to something or speak something into existence, as a way of saving lives, as well as destroying what needs to be destroyed and building what needs to be built, and sometimes as simple as opening up our own minds and hearts and figuring out our own journey as individual humans in this world, right? And thinking about a little bit about visioning, all of your points are just, I would love to just speak with you all like all day. We could cipher on this so much because everyone here has so much, and I'm starting to think even more about the future. Sometimes I feel like I've always been a person who loves looking at the past, what has happened before. I find it so fascinating. But then I feel I'm living in the future right now. The things that I've read about or thought about or watched movies about, we're in it, but there's more, way more. And I would love to know each one of you, just a brief thought of like, what are your thoughts about spoken word and Black artistry and griot culture as we move into the 2020s? Is there something that's exciting you? Is there something that you're concerned about? Is there something that you'd want to see, whether it's locally or nationally or internationally? What role are you as writers and poets and MCs and every facet of the word? What role do you want to play in the future of this art form? And you could take any of those long sentences I asked for and just, your one of your first thoughts that comes to your mind as we go around to everyone, as we start to wind down. Something about the future, what you see or want to see or what you think is coming.
I can start. I think, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here is really important, and I think there's a whole generation that has come into spoken word through like poetry slams and that sort of thing, and they haven't seen that poetry can be different. And I think, when people talk about listening to the album and hearing all these different styles and different ways of telling stories, I would, even with the young people that I work with, I always try to encourage them to find different ways to tell the story. Don't just, well, this is what slam is, so this is what I'm going to do. Like, have fun, explore, experiment, try some different things. And I think, if through doing this, we get more people interested in listening to the album and then realizing that their work could sound different, I think that would be a great thing for the future, because what often happens is, when everyone thinks, well, just slam, 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 then people just get tired of it. They're just like, well, that all sounds the same. And, somebody already mentioned that the beauty of the album is that all the pieces sounded different. And I think that's one of the things I'd really love to see moving forward. And I try to, impart with a lot of the young people that I work with.
great. Thank you. Thanks, Dwayne. Anybody could jump in.
Yeah, that definitely,
Just cipher on that.
definitely, when I say educate, is to expand minds in the sense of what is, like Dwayne is saying, and what has been. And for me, I feel that I would say in a way robbed of it, because it was the same circles, a very small circle, and we're all just doing the same thing for 15 years. And I'm not the only one that feels this way in Montreal. And that's why traveling is so great. When you're on stage alone, traveling is great. But when you're sharing with other poets, you just feel like, wow, I'm in a whole new world. Like, that's what this album did. I just felt like I was exploring, and I'm in this museum, and I'm walking into different rooms, and, and I'm seeing different, how do you say it? Like, you're amazing writers with, painting with words. And I'm just seeing different huge pieces and your mediums and how you're using it. And it takes your breath away, So I think that's so important. Also, coming from a counseling background, when I'm listening, it facilitates healing. And I take it seriously when I'm performing and delivering, but not having my copies. But I do take the work seriously when I'm about to write or spit, that it will have an impact. It will elevate someone, but it will touch someone. And at the same time, sometimes, like after, I heard what you said, Naila, but that was a time that when you were expressing that, I think we need that time to be able to like express in that way and have that perspective in that moment, right? So I honor that too, because that's the beauty of it, where the evolution. So for WordLife, and you saying 2020, when we all had people had New Year's resolution, or like, this year is about 2020 vision. Who the hell knew we would have seen all of this, right? Like, we had no idea what was going to hit us. So to have a follow-up, like, first I say push what you guys had birthed, as past adolescent years now, and have a follow-up that doesn't, push aside those who were part of it, but invite some other people who weren't part of that project. And I think it's a revolution. I won't even say evolution. It is a revolution through the work. And like Dwayne said, break rules. Teach others to break rules and go beyond what they think it is. I've been part of many collectives that's like, no, you're not allowed to read. You can't do this. 2 minutes. I'm like, where'd you guys get this? So educate, empower, and elevate through poetry. It is therapy for a lifetime, and I'm a true believer of that.
Thank you.
I think that's to piggyback on that, as you say, it's, in teaching this new generation, is just that there's blueprints, especially for the business side of what we do. Because I feel like a lot of us, for the love and the poor artists, we're going to be right. So a lot of us, we slept on people's couches and I remember, basically, doing those road trips and running out of gas and pushing the car, right?
Oh, wow.
But definitely, the traveling, the poet being able to travel and actually getting to see the other things. So like, I've been lucky, and actually in true WordLife, I've gotten basically when we had like the first poetry exchange, and I got to go to Vancouver for the first time. And then since that time, from Halifax to Calgary to all these different cities across Canada, Montreal, and even when Anthony had first contacted me to be on the WordLife CD, and then taking me to Montreal, and I got to see Jessica Caremore and Roger Bonnet-Gard in Montreal at Izarts, and that was basically right, like that, because at that time, because also too, I got a poetry log of all the performances I've had since 1991.
Oh,
right, and
literally,
so I actually can follow literally the whole thing. Right. After 2000, I actually stopped, because then the shows were just kind of crazy after that. But I literally from 1991. But what it actually gives me is like a timeline, kind of going, okay, this is where I was at, this is what I was doing, and just what I saw basically in terms of becoming a promoter of spoken word. I remember trying to get clubs to basically like, and trying to explain to them, well, this is what spoken word is like, and it's this new thing you know, it's this new thing, you know, and new in terms of the commercial
Yes, right.
part of it, because really we're coming from the tradition of griots. So coming to the tradition of griots, it's not a new thing, but it was a new thing to put in the club. And just having those kind of conversations, and then noticing literally like 4 years later, so by the time that basically poets who came after me in Ottawa basically were just like, oh, the clubs are coming to us and asking us if we want to put on shows, right? And just seeing that change, how that goes. So each generation, they've had a different experience, you know. Then you had the slam generation. You had the slam generation, and basically was like, okay, well, you have to write your poem. Because my generation, when we wrote poems, we wrote some epic poems. Them thing was long.
Lord of mercy, them something that was so long. Lord of mercy.
Right?
Everybody,
It was like,
everybody
yo,
was ready.
it was Malcolm X 3 hours and change kind of poem, right? Right? And it was like, okay, and then you got people like Dwayne only writing 2-minute poem.
This is perfect for the sound bites, right? Especially we're in sound bite time right now, right? So,
right, you know, basically keeping it short and sweet, you know. So, but it's but definitely the blueprint. I would say that basically we need a new blueprint in terms of how we look at ourselves as artists, so that and basically public speaker. We are public speakers. We are coaches. We are teachers, right? And those blueprints of the people that if we follow, I think the blueprint of like public speakers, then we can kind of get our actual worth. Because people are still trying to pay us $150 on little pocket change and things like that, and we have to now, yeah, right, right, you know,
well, just jumping off into I want to make sure that I give I think it's Wyze and JD and I believe Britta just jumping off at Eddy about what one thing that's you're excited about or visioning for the future. He's talking about making sure the blueprint continues to change. Wyze, what do you have on your mind?
Well,
move down?
What excites me particularly is the hive mind and seeing the way the culture has adapted to being commented on and being created by all these minds at once. I always feel like, you know, Black culture is very it's very intelligent because it's based off of implied knowledge, right? So if you don't understand, in a lot of our art, we assume that you know certain things about us. And if you don't, you would actually have to learn to get the full scope of the art that's being presented to you. And what I find with the hive mind online is that, you know, everything is built off of so much implied knowledge that is coming so fast. And what excites me about the creativity coming from that is that you're building on layers upon layers upon layers, so that even like the terminology and the use, the so-called memification of things is built off of a shared implied knowledge that we all know this happened. And so what we're building off, the touchstones that we're using and the code words that we're using are built off all of us having seen this video or all of us having witnessed this event. And now we're building off of it. And we're using shortcuts of language to convey multiple things at once. So it's almost like words are becoming avatars and words are becoming icons and imagery. And that to me is really exciting when I think about, you know, what's exciting about the culture and the art form. That's to me is what's exciting, because now I say something, you make a comment on it, somebody else comments on your comment, and in that commentary, there's something that all of us relate to. And then 10 comments down the line, if you weren't following the trail, you might not even have an idea of what's going on because the language has now become so codified. And that to me was always the allure of black culture in all its forms. So dancehall was like that for me. Hip hop was like that for me. All of the different various parts of the culture that really excited me was because we had this thing that was moving so fast and was so based off of a shared experience and a shared knowledge that if you weren't a part of it, you had to work to get inside it. And over the years, I found the culture got way more open, which was great in a lot of ways, but also let in a lot of people who didn't really necessarily deserve to be in there because they weren't willing to do the work to get there. And now what I see happening is it's moved so fast that it's kind of closing back in a way at the same time as it's open. And you have to be willing to do the work to get the full impact of the culture. And, you know, I love that. So that's what's exciting to me.
Amazing point. Thank you. And JD and Britta, as we wrap up with your two comments before we bring ourselves to a close. Britta.
Yeah, I'll be quick, just in the interest of time. I'm really excited about being a mentor that is able to provide opportunities for mentees to learn how to mentor and have those opportunities be paid. Because I feel like as someone who gets to move through a lot of different communities and spaces to share my words, to share my poetry, I think like part of my vision is just being able to work with other either emerging artists, but especially like young Black women who are poets and want to become educators as well, to be able to bring them into those spaces and not only resource share, but also to have those opportunities be paid as well as they learn to grow and develop their own curriculum and develop their own facilitation skills and peer mentorship skills. That's a big goal of mine. And I've actually been able to accomplish it this year through some affiliated organizations that I work with. And so I'm hoping that that grows and that evolves as we move into the future.
Dope. Thank you. And lastly, JD.
Man, oh man, you guys speak so eloquently. You know, I'll just reiterate what I said a few times already. I am really positive about the future in terms of spoken word and getting things out there. Listen, man, this is a new art form to me. Listen, I'm young, all right? I don't care when. I got my grade. That's all right. I'm 50. I'm younger than Jay-Z. You understand? I'm here. And my next step, you know, what we did in the past is great, but what we do in the future is going to be even better. And you have to understand this spoken word is an offshoot, not an offshoot. It's a brother to hip hop, all right? It's akin to hip hop. It's not, you know, people shouldn't look at it as something that's ethereal or anything like that. It's us, it's poetry, it's in our bloodstream, it's in our blood cells, understand? Which is also in hip hop, which is also in the blues, which is also in jazz and everything else, right? Mm-hmm. So this musical art form is just growing. I love where we've been, but I love even more where we're going, if that makes sense to you.
Oh, yes. And we are continuing to go because we are all here. We are this generation because we're here, right? Y'all are making art, have been influenced from the past as well as the present, and continuing to create culture for our future. And I just want to thank each and every one of you, Naila, JD Vishus, Jay Wyze, Eddy DaOriginalOne, Britta B, Blue Riva, and Dwayne Morgan. Big up the WordLife team and the WordLife crew, everybody who was on WordLife, Tales of the Underground Griots, and all those coming together for WordLife20. Make sure that you all keep connected as we spread the word about our virtual events over the next little while, and we'll be spreading your tags and your websites and where people can find you and all of that. So keep connected to each other, and let's keep spreading the word. WordLife 20, y'all. This is Motion.
Nation.
Big up the
Word Life.
NGN, Northern Griots, and we out.
Yes.